Hello and welcome to the Real Women, Real Business podcast. I'm your host, Shauna Lynn Simon, and I have with me a lovely guest today. I've got Trina McPhee from MacPhee Interiors. She operates a home staging and design company out of Edmonton, Alberta, and she's a fellow Canadian. And today we're talking about pricing and service strategies. And I'll tell you a little bit about Trina. I'm going to have her tell you a little bit about herself as well. But Trina comes from a background of real estate. She worked as a real estate agent for a number of years before shifting gears into the home staging world. So to say that she has seen it all would probably be an understatement. She's been in and out of hundreds, possibly thousands of homes. And she really knows what it is that today's buyers are looking for. And that is key in a home staging professional. But that's not all she does. She also does interior design work. She does short-term rental designs like your Airbnb properties. She's got a lot of great expertise. And today I've invited her to join us because I wanted to talk a little bit about some things that she did recently with her pricing and services strategy. So welcome, Trina.
Hi, Shauna Lynn. Thank you so much for inviting me to your podcast. I'm looking forward to diving into this topic today.
I am super excited about this. So first, before we get too far into things, tell us a little bit about what got you into home staging as a career in the first place.
Actually, when I was a real estate agent showing tons of homes, I would be in and out and I would see all these homes that were bit of a hot mess, lacking in proper presentation. And I saw that there was a need for home staging. Home staging was still sort of up and coming, and it piqued my interest. So I started out with professional organizing and then dove right into home staging, took a bunch of different educational programs and training and found my passion. I actually have since let my real estate license go because home staging and design and decorating is what I love to do.
I love that. It's so great when you can actually follow in pursuit of a career that really fulfills a passion that you have, and especially when it's, unleashing that creativity that you've got. But I know that you're also very strategic. It's not there's a big misconception about home stagers being about or pillow fluffers and such. And of course, there's a lot of strategy that really goes into it. And how long have you been in business for?
I've been in business for about 7 years.
Yeah, and so probably seen a lot over the years between that and your real estate career. And how long were you a real estate agent for?
Just about 6 years. So quite a bit of experience to bring with me into this home staging career.
Yeah, for sure. No, I love that. And so recently you made some changes to your services and with that, some of the pricing strategy. So let's dive into a little bit about that. First of all, what made you decide to revisit your services and pricing strategy?
Absolutely. Well, I actually started off with hiring a fabulous business coach, someone you might know.
Tell me more.
Shauna is an amazing business coach. We've been working together now for, oh goodness, about 4 months. And it's just brought so much value and change to my business. And we were just so easy to work with. And we just work really well together. So part of the business coaching was to take a look at my current services and see if they were meeting the needs of real estate agents and homeowners and whether or not there was room to add anything in or increase my prices and sort of just look towards growing my business.
Okay, so let's take a step back on that one. So we're looking at maybe some changes now. If you don't mind me sharing, because I was your coach, when you came to me, you had already identified that you felt that you had a good, valuable product, but you were identifying that for some people, they may not have liked the price point so much, and you weren't sure if you should be trying to figure out, like, you wanted to get paid more, not less. So we were talking about potentially adding a couple of new price points. And one thing that I teach on quite often, of course, is what I call the Goldilocks rule of pricing, where you have 3 pricing structures, where the objective is to get people into that middle pricing structure, which is where your core offering is, but you've got a slightly lower priced one and a slightly higher priced one. And so let's talk about that, because it's still, even though you're trying to get people into that middle one, you still have options that appeal to people on both ends, which is the idea. So it allows you to be that much more accessible to more people. So when you came to me, you had said that you had identified you were considering adding a couple of price points. So talk to me a little bit about your thought on that.
Absolutely, because I, for the last 7 years or so, have just only had one home staging consultation at one price point. And all of the real estate agents that I currently work with, they love what that offers. But in trying to gain more market share and working with new realtors, I'd often come up with sort of what perhaps the going rate was for a staging consultation for the average stager, and my rate and the consultation that I offered were much more comprehensive and more expensive. But in order for me to reach more agents, I thought it might be a good idea to see if I could scale back on what I was offering for my signature service to offer an entry point. Ideally, when I'm working with these agents, it's key to upgrade them to the signature consultation so they really see what the service and the value is for the higher price point. And then we add in the top tier as well, just to have, like you said, the Goldilocks rule of three.
Okay, and so to get started, I said you had to do some market research. I will say you are an absolute dream to coach, because if I gave you a task to do, man, did you ever attack that? And so you were probably the fastest person to go through the market research that I've ever had. But what I had you do was contacting some of your current clients, as well as people who perhaps had not hired you that you've been in contact with. So tell me a little bit about how the market research went. What did that look like and how did that go?
When I started off identifying some agents that I had worked with previously, and ones I had made contact with but had not booked my services yet, almost as if they weren't quite sure what they were, perhaps sitting on the fence, or what the validity was to having a consultation. So then I prepped a list of questions on what would be best and how to drill down to really asking why and why and why, to get to the real answers. So then I started making my calls. Oh, okay. So actually, I guess I sent out ahead of time. I booked everybody in, and I thought the calls would probably be about half an hour in length. And it turned out that most of them were an hour. It probably could have went a bit longer, but I had scheduled everybody in a couple weeks' time, whatever worked for their schedule. And then we just jumped into the first call. And it was, I think even in that first call, we sort of fell off script, if you will, from my questions, because the conversations just would start going organically. And I still met my objectives of quizzing them on all the information that I was looking for. But it was much more, lots of conversation, and one thing would lead to another. So it was very insightful into their businesses and how I could better serve them and what they were looking for and their clients.
So sort of an added benefit then was that you got to actually have more of a conversation with them. It wasn't just, because I know some people will say, well, can't I just send out a survey to do the same thing that she did? Because you're telling people now that you interviewed, what was it, 8 people in the end that you interviewed? So 8 people, an hour each, that's 8 hours. So of course I can understand there's probably a few people that are listening to this and saying like, I don't know how I'm going to find 8 hours to interview people, which I understand, of course, but to your point, though, you end up having these additional conversations with them. So, what kind of opportunities did that open up for you?
Well, yeah, because if I'd have just sent out like a form, they would have answered like the top layer, and then we'd have had to go back and forth, or I really wouldn't have been able to find out what it was that I was looking for. But I definitely increased my relationship with each of these realtors, the ones that I've already been doing business with, and the four new ones that I will be working with this year. It's led to some other opportunities. With one of the agents inviting me to participate in a real estate event as an expert on home staging, filling in that
Excellent.
category.
Excellent.
And yeah, I think it's just really, I've also had a shout out at a networking event from one of the agents. He was just so impressed that I was taking the time to do the market research, and he was just like floored that a stager would want to know like how to help him and what makes his business tick and how I can improve my services to him and his clients. So it's been very, very successful. And I'm so thankful that, you had suggested that we do this, because otherwise I wouldn't have ever thought to do that. And, going forward, it'll probably be a yearly thing where I will touch base with some of my agents just, to have that conversation,
Yeah.
check in.
I love that. And so talking about the shout out that you had where the real estate agent was super impressed about the fact that you did this, I think that brings up a really good point as well. Of first of all, it shows not only that you care about them and their business, but also that you are operating a business, that you're not just sort of this fly by night. I just opened up a business and I do this one thing and you're showing that you are a business professional as well. You are an entrepreneur who is entitled to the respect that comes along with that as well. And just like all entrepreneurs, you're still figuring things out because we are all constantly figuring things out. I don't think you'll ever meet an entrepreneur that's like, I got it. I've cracked the code. I figured all the things out to entrepreneurialism. Like, we're good. I got this. So I think that's great that it identifies that you are very serious about operating a high quality business that supports their needs. So that's great too. And you also mentioned that it gave you an opportunity to talk about some of your services. And in our calls that you and I had, you were telling me that you were talking to them about things that you offer, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I forgot that you offered that." So tell me a little bit more about those conversations that you had where it helped them to understand a little bit more about your services.
Absolutely, because part of the call was to sort of flesh out whether or not they'd be interested in a lower price consultation and what that would entail and look like versus my signature service. So even in the signature service, I have added in one additional feature to that. And one of the realtors was like, wow, that's brilliant. Like, that is just, you're providing so much value. And they didn't bat an eye when I, slightly increased the price this year, and I will likely increase it again next year for that service. But yeah, it just kind of reminded them all the things that we can do and the ways that we can work with them and their clients to achieve that final proper presentation of the home, and how marketing photos are just so crucial.
Mm-hmm. And I think you bring up a really good point there, though, too, in talking about the pricing. If you are providing value, people will pay you what you're worth as long as they see the value in it. So it's a combination of, first of all, you have to have that value there in the first place, but then the other part of that is ensuring that they understand the value that they're getting. So going back to what you were talking about earlier, a brand new agent to you that hasn't used you before doesn't necessarily understand the difference until they've had a chance to experience it. So being able to bring them in at a lower price point to get them to experience it, but identifying to them though, but the value of this is greater than what you're paying. So you can actually see the full aspect of it and then bring them in on an ongoing basis, which I think is a great idea. Yeah. What were some of the considerations that you brought into that factored in when you were figuring out how to revise your services? Because you talked about you took some things away, you added some things in. What were some of the main factors that contributed to that?
Well, I took what I was currently offering and, like I said, added in an extra benefit there, which just increases the value. It was a little bit harder to take away services because I'm used to providing a certain level of service. That's sort of been my standard. Because in past, I had agents approach me and say, well, the going rate is, and, this is what they're offering. I'm like, yes, but I strongly stand behind the fee that I charge and the service that I provide. So it has been a bit of a struggle to sort of take things out when you're used to doing it one way. And I've had a gentleman that I have actually already upgraded, and he was blown away by, the value adds that he got in the extra service. So he's no longer interested in just the entry level price point.
I love that because you're also setting the bar then for other stagers in your area of saying, like, come meet me up here. If they want to charge a lower fee. And I mean, you're adding a lot of value, but it doesn't necessarily take more work to add value either, right? So you're not necessarily spending more time. So going back to that then, so when it came to coming up with the pricing for the different tiers that you have in your consultations now, how did you figure out the pricing for these?
Well, I loosely based it on the amount of time. So for the lower tier with the scaled back features, it wasn't necessarily going to take me as much time to prep for the consultation, do the entire consultation, and then I'm very much heavy with my signature consultation of follow up and a final walk through, that kind of thing, to make sure that the home is properly prepared. So the entry level is actually just going to be a walk and talk. So I'm no longer going to be taking the time to write notes and not necessarily following up. I'm saving all of that for my signature consultation. Now, all of my consultations get a fabulous product. It's a client care package that you actually had created.
Yes.
And it definitely sets me apart because no one else in my market is providing that to their clients.
And that's amazing too. And I have to say, like, yes, we're talking specifically about the home staging industry when it comes to this client care package. And I'm going to talk about this a little bit for a moment because this is not a plug to go buy my package. The idea is that in any industry that you are in, you can do something like this. So the client care package is essentially its own welcome package, but it has value. A welcome package is not a sales package. There's nothing worse than people sending you like an email and saying, hey, welcome to being a client of ours. Here's a ton of information about who we are and how we can upsell you. That's not what this package is. It's about providing additional value. So there are guidelines and checklists in there for them to follow along. There are statistics on the value of staging or case studies, testimonials, social proof, whatever you want to call it. And then, of course, it does talk about the process as well. So here's what you can expect now that you've hired us. Here's what the next step is. Here's what happens after that. Does it sell your additional services? Of course it does. It also has a lovely spot where you're like, by the way, if you need some additional help, here's how else we can support you. But that's not the forefront of it. So when you get there, they're already pre-sold on the other things that you can do. So it makes it for a little bit of an easier, for lack of a better term, sales pitch. I hate the term sales pitch, of course, but essentially, if you're going to try to sell them on additional services, that's what it's doing. So the idea of this client care package that I created for my own company and I've introduced now as a product for purchase for other stagers is to give a nice, warm welcome to a new client. It helps to give them that sense that they're going to be valued, they're going to be taken care of. It also has the added bonus, though, of ensuring that they've got these checklists with your logo all over them, and they're actually going to remember you. So it just adds to that memorability aspect of things. And I'm big on whatever industry you're in, whatever business you're operating, you got to be memorable. Back in my staging days, I can remember walking into houses and I would say to them, oh, have you ever worked with a stager before? And sometimes they would say, yeah, I did. And majority of the time that they said they had, they could not remember the name of the stager. They couldn't remember their business name. They couldn't remember their name. Now, granted, usually this was several years prior because most people aren't selling a house every few months or anything. So I understand, some time passed, but it says something if they can't remember the name. Now, of course, I had the added advantage, of course, that when I would go into these houses, if they didn't remember my name, they would say, it's the stager with the pink hair. And I'm the only stager in town with pink hair. So that was pretty easy to figure out. But most of the time, they actually remembered the company name because they stared at it as they were working through their list, through this client care package. And I apologize, I'm kind of like going off on a tangent on this one, but I believe it's such a powerful thing to going back to what we're talking about shaping your services and your pricing. You're adding value. However, to create this client care package initially takes time. To be able to give it out to a client takes next to nothing. One of the things that I did do with mine that I do recommend others do, is not always feasible, depends on where you're located, but I would send mine out, an actual physical copy. I would send it out to the clients ahead of time. And that just also helped to elevate the level of professionalism and the value of the company of what they're going to be getting from their overall experience. It's not always possible, but if it is, sure, it costs a few dollars to do it. We use a local courier to do it. So it costs us like $7 or $8 to do it. To me, that was money that was worth eating. My time to put it together digitally and send it out is about the same as it is to physically send it out. And for an extra $7 or $8, it made sense to get it in their hands that way. So again, whatever business you're in, whatever industry you're in, having some sort of welcome package that provides actual value to your clients will significantly increase the value of the service you're providing, as well as keep you top of mind. So there's so much to it. So, I mean, it has the benefit to you as a company, but it has the additional benefit of like actually the agents love it, the clients love it, like everyone's looking at this and saying, wow, this is a gold mine of stuff, you know. So I love that you mentioned the client care package, because like you said, that's a huge part of it. So you are offering that in your signature package, or is that in all of your packages, just out of curiosity?
That's included in all of my packages because I find that the value in that package, it sets the tone for how how the consultation is going to run, and helps to combat some of their anxiety and apprehension about a consultation, because most times they've never had one, and they often feel that like watching HGTV is something that's going to happen at their house, which it is not. So I find that it's just a nice way to welcome them and let them know that we're professional, we have a process, what to expect, and what's going to happen next.
Yeah, and you know what? You bring up a really good point about it helping to clear off some of the anxiety as well. So, Joey Coleman wrote the book called Never Lose a Customer Again. Fantastic book. And in it, he talks about the various phases that a client goes through, whether they're buying a physical product or a service or whatever. But especially with services, he talks about a couple of phases, and I'm going to script these phases. I believe the first one is assess, and the next one is admit. So assess is when they're trying to figure you out still. Do I want to hire them? Admit is like, yep, you've got a solution to a problem that I want. I'm going to hire you. And then when they actually hire you, it's that time between when they've said yes to when you're actually providing the service. That's when the potential for a buyer's remorse can kick in. And so if you are not communicating with them in some way that gives them a reassurance that they've made a good decision, they could be that much more likely to get anxious. Now, in your case, Trina, of course, as a home seller, oftentimes they're not actually even the ones paying for the consultation. So it's not so much a buyer's remorse as it is just anxiety about the process, like you said. But there's so much that if you can communicate with your clients in that interim to say, like, I've got you, we're okay, you're in good hands with me. There's so much value that that provides to the future of your business. So now once you get there, you're that much likely to be able to sell them on other things, provided they need it, of course. But if they need additional staging services, it's easier to sell them on that. So I love that you talk about how that it eases their anxiety. So I love that you include that in all of your packages as well. That's really good. So you've since revised your consultation packages, and you said you adjusted your pricing accordingly. And overall, you've had a positive response from the sounds of it. Is that right?
Yes, absolutely. I've booked some new real estate agents just recently that had never worked with me before. And I had put together, with your help, a brochure that kind of outlined all my services, and everybody just gravitates to that middle package. They just, it's genius, right? The rule of three and the Goldilocks story.
It's the best bang for your buck. Oh, and I'd love to say that I can take credit for creating it. I mean, if you look at any software is a great example. Anytime you're signing up for some sort of software package, they've always got like that free basic version, and then you upgrade it, and then you can upgrade it from there. And they've usually got like these 3 tiers, and they're always showing that middle tier as the most popular, and for good reason. We put the most value into the third tier, or into that middle tier, sorry. And then there's going to be some people where they need more, or they're just simply the ones who always want the best of the best of the best. And so they're going to take that top tier. And there's times where, you know, that lower price point, maybe even for a client who values your signature package, but maybe for this particular client, they're taking a lower commission, or the client's further out of town, and so they don't really feel like they're as concerned about getting repeat business from them. So they just want to, you know, save a couple of bucks, but still feel that they're providing a value to them. So it gives that great option for them. So I love that. Okay. Anything else that you want to share in terms of how you came up with these and how they're being received and the value of them, or anything about the process? Now's the time.
Well, I definitely feel that everyone, as daunting and scary as it might be to have that conversation with your clients, because sometimes you might get some negative feedback as well, right? And they're just solely expressing that, hey, could we look at adding this or maybe doing this differently, which is phenomenal to be able to like adjust your services that way. But I think it's an exercise most people should do. You'll get value out of it. And at the end of the day, you're just strengthening your relationships with your top real estate agents or clients, whatever industry you're in, because nowadays people, everything is so email and text. And this is just a way to either, have that conversation or even take them out for coffee and do it face to face. I like to do that once a quarter if possible, try and get in front of my agents and just build that relationship. Business is about building relationships. People want to work with who they know, like, and trust. And this is just one way to add to that.
Absolutely. And so when you got some of that negative feedback, I kind of like what you said about that, about getting, yeah, you're going to get some negative feedback. How did you handle that?
Well, was fortunate enough that it wasn't too much, but I was just, it was a way for me to sort of step up and go, oh, like I didn't realize perhaps that they might have needed something extra or how one of their clients might have felt. So it just gives you the opportunity to say, hey, great, I've heard you and I'm going to pivot, change, do better, and look forward to working together in the future.
I love that. Yeah, because I think no one ever wants to hear anything negative necessarily about their business, but if all we're getting is rave reviews, it's hard sometimes to really identify what it is that they really need and what you might be missing out on. And it doesn't mean that, I mean, just because someone says, wouldn't it be great if XYZ, if we could do these things, you don't necessarily have to do all those things, but even being able to just at least say to them, I hear you, I see you, I'll consider that and let me see what I can do. And even if you're not saying yes specifically to whatever it is that they're looking for, but maybe finding a variation of that that's inspired by it, that you say, I can't do what you're looking for, doesn't align with my values, my goals, the company I'm building, whatever. But I hear what you're trying to achieve by with this, that I came up with this other thing instead. And when you contacted them for the market research calls, did you offer them any sort of incentive to do the calls with you?
I did. I decided I was going to give them a coffee card to their favorite coffee shop. And surprisingly enough, all of them said, you don't need to do that. We're just happy to help you out. Like, we see that you're trying to grow your business and we want to do everything that we can to see you succeed. I still did get all the coffee cards and send them out as a thank you, but it wasn't expected by any of the people that I interviewed. But they were
That's
delighted to
incredible.
receive them.
And that's so incredible too, because I think that we underestimate when we've got these relationships with people, and even some of them you didn't necessarily even have a strong relationship with before the calls, but I think that people genuinely want to be helpful. They genuinely want to see others succeed. And if they can contribute to that in some way, I think we underestimate sometimes the power of what allowing someone to assist with something can look like. So I love that, sort of the power of reciprocity, even if it's a matter of just you got to learn a little bit about their business and now maybe you'll recommend them to someone, like they just never know where that's going to, how it's going to be paid forward exactly. But them doing that sort of good deed for you and giving up some of their time. But it also says, I mean, I'm sure that they genuinely enjoy chatting with you. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been hour calls, of course. So, customer service has got to be there as well. Yeah. And I know you're someone who you talked about, you threw out the script at the beginning, basically. You still got your questions answered, but you didn't follow the script. And you are more of a script type of person. What sort of recommendations would you give for someone if they're thinking like, oh, I get nervous on the phone? I know especially the younger generation gets a little bit nervous doing phone calls. So what sort of advice would you give to them for that?
Well, absolutely. There was a lot of value in putting together the list of questions and sort of perhaps rehearsing or practicing a little bit ahead of time because it put me at ease, which then in turn put the person on the other end of the call at ease. But the conversations flowed organically. And that was okay. At the end of the day, I still got all of my market research done, but I learned so much extra because some of my questions might not have, if we'd have just stuck to the script, it might not have veered here and there. And so it was just amazing. And like I said, I was expecting these calls to go super quick, and an hour, and we were still chatting. So that's one thing I would, don't book your calendar too tight in case things do decide to run a little longer, because you don't want to cut them off, so to speak, right? Like you want to
Sure.
put their attention and their focus. You want to learn all that you can. So I definitely would put in a little bit of extra room in there. And I also took notes so then I could compile everything afterwards. And that also helped me with a clear picture of what each person was looking for and how to best meet the needs of all of them, sort of what my key components would be to a consultation.
Well, I think that it's so important. I think that a lot of business owners make a lot of assumptions about what they think people need. And I mean, I often use the example of Uber versus the taxi cabs. And the reason I always bring this one up is, so many cab drivers were, kind of complaining about the ride share programs that are coming out and how, well, they're not insured people. And they kind of just had this one sticking point that they just kept putting all their eggs into that basket, basically, of like, their one sort of sticking point of here's why you shouldn't use it. And what they failed to do was really recognize the problems that Uber was solving for the client. So, okay, so when I get into a cab, I want to know exactly what it's going to cost. Oh, no, we can't do that. Well, I want to know how long it's going to take for them to get there. I don't want to step onto the street to hail a cab. I don't want to have to call and then someone else accidentally takes my cab and I'm calling 30 minutes later saying, where's my cab? I want to be able to track them and know that they're coming and know that I'm the only person who can get into it. No, we can't do that. Okay, Uber solved that, right? So there was all these things that Uber was solving, not to mention the app part of it, of especially for the younger generation. They don't want to do a phone call, but I'll admit I'm in an older generation and I had no problem doing phone calls. But where Uber is convenient is I can be out with friends, for example, and I don't want to disrupt the conversation and step away to go make a call to get a car to come and pick me up. And instead, I can just open up my app and in a few little taps on my screen, I've got an Uber on its way to me and I didn't even have to disrupt the conversation. So there's that part of it as well. So here Uber takes a look at what is it that everybody hates about taking cabs, and they answered all those questions and they solved them. Well, do you think that they just assumed that they knew what everybody's issue was? I'd be willing to bet there was some market research done there. And they're identifying problems that like everyone knew those problems existed. It's just a matter of someone else came up and solved them. So by doing those market research calls, you're potentially identifying challenges that you didn't even know were an actual thing for them, especially as the real estate industry changes and, the dynamics are changing and the whole landscape of things changes. So everything that they're facing. I know that you've got real estate experience, but you haven't been practicing as a real estate agent the last few years. So you don't necessarily know all the things that they're dealing with. So how do you know unless you have those conversations? So essentially, you now have these new service packages that are just an enhancement, essentially, of what you already had, just a bit fine-tuned. You've got pricing that you feel reflects your value, and you are catering that to your ideal client and what they actually need. So that all sounds pretty good, doesn't it?
It does. It's working fabulously.
I love that. I mean, couldn't have said it better myself, but I know this is not a plug for saying, I did all of this by any means. Trina did all the work on this, but one of the reasons why I wanted to bring you on the show is to share your experience, because I can tell people this is valuable, all that I want. And I didn't come up with all these ideas either. This is not brand new stuff. Like, I'm not necessarily the person who's discovered market research calls. Again, this is not a new concept by any means, but it just goes to show that sometimes I think in business, we want to cut some corners. And especially in an industry like home staging, you're following a passion. And I think we get so passionate about, like, I just want to launch. I just want to get going. I just want to do the things that I want to do. And I just want to be a stager. And it's easy to kind of skip over some things. But if you don't know what your clients are actually looking for, how do you find your clients, for starters? How do you provide services they're going to value? How do you ensure that you're not getting that pushback on pricing? And how do you ensure that the phone is actually ringing in the first place? So it starts with having the right services and the pricing that reflects that. And then it's a lot easier to understand your messaging to get it out there. So if you recall, when we started working together, that was a big thing as well. Well, we need to make sure we've got your marketing messaging down, but we couldn't even start on that until we had the services and the pricing identified, right? Because that affects it. If you were going to be the lowest cost leader in your area, that's a different messaging than the messaging we're providing with you being the highest valued stager in your area. Those are two different markets that you're marketing to. So I know that you've been working on some of the marketing messaging. I know I'm shifting gears a little bit here, and we're not going to get too far into this, but I know you've been working on some of the marketing messaging as well. How are you finding that's going now that you've done these market research calls and you've got this clarity on your services and pricing?
Well, I'm making great strides in the marketing messaging and working with you again. It's just, as someone who's never worked with a coach, in my experience, you just don't know what you don't know. So having a coach to say, let's do this and this, and here's how we're going to do it, and what the outcome is, it's just made me so much more insightful, and to who my ideal audience is and how to speak to them. So I am going to be remapping my website, for example, and the verbiage that's been going on there is going to be directly from figuring out who my ideal clients were and what problems they're facing and how I'm going to be solving them. And some of that came right from those market research calls.
I love that. I love that. So that you're not just sort of shouting out all the features of the things that you offer. You're actually identifying the true benefits and the true value so that you can market in that voice, in a language that they're going to understand. And I know it sounds super cliche to say the marketing should be like, are you this person? Sounds like an infomercial, like, are you this, this, and this? Well, then I've got X for you. But it does still work. And even if you don't want to actually have it in that messaging, just to be able to say, I do this. And people are like, oh, that's what I need. That's the problem I have. She solves it. Well, that's who I need to call, right? So, and I know I'm oversimplifying things, of course, as well. And you're also in the Real Women, Real Business Mastery Program, which is the latest group coaching program that I offer, which is the 12-month program. So we'll be working to fine tune some things through that as well. Just out of curiosity, how are you finding that experience so far?
It's been awesome. There has been a great group of ladies, and we're all learning from one another. It's very collaborative, and we've got the calls and the modules to work through. The first one was working on our vision, and I had done part of that doing the one-on-one coaching with you, but that information is going to be valuable. I can take a look at that for my other services, because we've been working together sort of more focused on staging, but I could take those exercises, and there are a few designers in the group, and work with them and really learn. It's very collaborative, and everyone is so friendly and open. It's a very safe environment to share, and we have a few laughs, and the cat might walk through, and it's just
I love that. Yeah. Well, and that's just it. I mean, it is collaborative. I say it's kind of like one-on-one coaching, like on steroids. So because you're getting, like, yes, I'm the one who's providing, the same tips that I would provide in one-on-one coaching, but you're getting answers from other people as well. So it's not just like it's from one person. You're getting multiple views. And so to your point, like, you don't know what you don't know. I don't know what I don't know. I mean, as a business coach, I think that if I ever stopped learning, I would not be able to provide value to my clients. And so I'm constantly learning new things. And a lot of times I get some of those lessons from my actual clients. Like, you just never know where that information is going to come from. So I so appreciate the group that we have. What's great about the program too is that there's various levels that are in there, but we're all going through the same exercises. And one of the things I find with a lot of female entrepreneurs, especially, is that we tend to want to follow this passion. And I kind of mentioned it earlier, we kind of dive headfirst into it. And then we get a little bit of momentum. And then we realize, like, oh, there's all this business stuff that, oh my gosh, I really need to get this stuff done too. and it seems daunting and overwhelming to try to take a step back. And so what I've tried to do in the program is make it more accessible. So what are the core things that we need to do to be able to build that foundation without making you have to stop your business either? Like, you're still running a business. So how do we make this accessible all at the same time? So I'm really excited about the program as we're rolling it out. And I'm glad that you are a part of it, because I think it's a great way, like I said, to kind of fine tune some of the things that we've already worked on. So listen, is there anything else that we haven't covered today in regards to your services and your pricing and the strategies that you came up with, that you want to share with everyone? Or if not, is there one takeaway that you can say, like, if you do nothing else, do this?
Well, absolutely. My one takeaway is to find a fabulous business coach, because they are going to work with you hand in hand and lead you through all the things, the steps that you should be doing, like your 12 months Real Women, Real Business program. It's going to be hitting 12 different pillars. And it really is just a way to improve your business, but we don't always know what we should be doing or when to do it. Even in the vision planning, it's like learning to say yes to this and no to something else, or not necessarily no, but at a later date, because my vision has now been clearly defined and I know what I'm focusing on and the things that I need to do to reach my goals. So, Shauna Lynn Simon coaching, absolutely, everybody.
I did not tell her to say that, everyone, by the way, but I so appreciated Trina. Trina, if people want to find you, where can they find you?
My website, probably MacPheeinteriors.com. I'm located in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. That's probably the best place to start.
Amazing. And of course, if you want to check out my coaching services further, go to shaunalynncoaching.com. Trina, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Shauna Lynn. It's been fabulous.
So listen, everyone, if you enjoyed the insights you heard in today's podcast, please feel free to follow us, subscribe, find us anywhere you find your podcast, and join us in the next episode. Until next time, have a good one, everyone.